Good morning, everyone.
This is Frank Bauer, KA3HDO, and he's the ARISS USA Chief Executive Director.
Thank you, Rosalie. This is Rosalie White, K1STO she's our ARL representative. It's part of ARISS. This is the ARISS USA, thank you. This is the ARISS USA conversation for today. We welcome you. What do you think about coming back to Hamvention after all these years? So wonderful. So wonderful.
Thank you all for being here. Love it. Pretty soon all these chairs are going to be filled up. We're just glad to have you here.
Okay, so we got a jam-packed activity today, so we're going to get started, I think, at this point. Go ahead, Rosalie.
And sometimes he talks over me.
She's a school teacher, and she's got a ruler. I thought you weren't allowed to do that anymore. Anyhow, I think, how many of you have heard or worked the space station? Yeah. Congratulations. Those that don't know about our program, we're a K through 16 international education program that inspires, engages, and educates youth in STEM education. And Rosalie and others will talk about what we do, but this is a very, relative to schools, it's a very long program that really gets the students involved and in-depth in education. But from a ham radio perspective, we have lots of capabilities on board. We will talk about that. And we're also backup communications for the International Space Station. So we serve a lot of purposes. We're international in scope. There's a ARISS USA, and then for the 5 space agency areas, regions, we have organizations to support Europe, Japan, and Japan handles all of Asia, Canada, and Russia. So basically that's what our program is if you're not familiar with it. The school contacts are 10 minutes. Why are they 10 minutes? Because that's when the space station rises and sets. We always have to work with orbit dynamics associated with this program. So I wanted to send a huge shout out to our major sponsors to our program. We could not do this program without NASA and in particular the Space Communications and Navigation Organization. They allow us to get them and the ISS National Lab give us flights to space station for equipment, and we work with them on operations with the astronauts on board. One of our newest sponsors is ARDC. We really appreciate ARDC's interest in youth. And we've got a program called Stereo that we'll talk about. And they're sponsoring that, and we're looking forward to a long relationship with ARDC on that activity. And then, of course, the 2 amateur radio organizations, the ARL and AMSAT, are the organizations that help. And all of these folks provide real money and in-kind support. You can tell my space background from NASA gets in there when I start talking real time. Then we have a number of other major sponsors that one I wanted to emphasize is the one on top, which is JVC Kenwood. Our Kenwood radio systems were modified to support operations in space. And so we thank them as well as everyone else on this chart here. And I think it's your turn, right?
Yes, we have goals, of course, just like any other project. And of course, our main ones are to inspire, engage, and educate. And everything we do touches one of those, whether it be young people or people of all ages, lifelong learners, just like all of you. When you enjoy the ARISS packet, ARISS SSTV sessions, ARISS Crossband, you are actually doing some lifelong learning. And so that's important to us. Of course, our young people who are going to take our place. So our job is to inspire, engage, and educate our future scientists, technologists, space explorers, and ham radio operators. And NASA takes an entire team to make their program work, and it takes an entire team for our program to work. So it's great to see all of you in here. It was great to see all of your hands go up, and hopefully we'll pull in a bunch of more new people. Next chart, please. Our team is an all-volunteer team. You can see various people in here of all kinds. We have school teachers. We have young people who are actually some of our volunteers. We've got a team of hardware and radio experts who have won awards, who are our volunteers. And probably, as you were all saying, that you took part in Contact, so you're all of our volunteers too. And in the top center, I want to focus on year's 2022 Hamvention Special Achievement Award winner, Kerry Banky. He's holding that multi-voltage power supply, which is upstairs on space station right now. And he put in hours and hours, and he gave a lot of his life to that multi-voltage power supply. And he's still building the last two, which will be backups and test models and that sort of thing. So it takes a team and a lot of people to help out. And I was just looking through the crowd, and I see one of our sponsors here up in the front row. President of QCWA, Ken, why don't you stand up? Ken Oki, VE. Come on up, he wants to say a couple of words. He's VE6 AFO, Alpha Foxtrot Oscar, Ken Oki, QCWA president. And QCWA has been a good supporter of ours.
Thank you, Rosalie and Frank. Rosalie and Frank, they're really dedicated volunteers in ARISS. And by the way, the Quarter Century Wireless Association has a presentation for you.
Oh my, $4,500. I am flabbergasted.
The Quarter Century Wireless Association is very pleased and proud to present this check to ARISS for all the work they do. And I hope the organization can continue to support them each year with this kind of money. Thank you for all you do, Frank and Rosalie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Really, really appreciate that. And what a surprise. All right, so it says on the title, ARISS 2.0. What is this ARISS 2.0 thing? Let me just say that in the 3 years since we were at Hamvention last, a lot of things have changed, and we're expanding. There's all kinds of new names and phrases that we're using now. We just mentioned expansion with ARDC, the significant work, and you'll hear about that shortly. The ARL Foundation. We became a new entity, ARISS USA. Now we're a 501c3 nonprofit. And then the whole ARISS 2.0 activity includes a lot of things that are our future and our students, our youth future. ISS is there. It will be there for a while, but we have to have a vision and make sure that there's things out there beyond ISS. And so you can see some of the names, Axiom, ARISS, and commercial space stations. From an education perspective, you're going to hear about Stereo, Sparky, and STAR. Engineering, Randy Berger's got a lot of projects, all centered around student mission control using Raspberry Pis and things, as well as we are now a facility on Space Station. We're an actual facility that organizations can partner with us on different kinds of experiments, which is something we're very interested in too. And as I said, experimentation, some of you that were here just a few minutes ago heard Nathaniel talk about some of the stuff that's being done on the ground, but doing ionospheric experiments in the ionosphere is a cool thing, and we really want to work, collaborate with HamSci and making some of that happen. Our operations activity, how many of you work the voice repeater? Great, great. And how many of you done APRS? Pretty much the same. What I'll say is that by next week, if everything goes well, we will have a second radio on board Space Station operational. We got that launched. It's going to be in the Russian segment. And if that is, we've been working with our Russian colleagues to try to get both systems running at the same time. It's big news, okay? I see smiles out there. So we've always said we wanted to keep digital running as much as possible, and so we'll be able to do both digital and analog capabilities. And as I said, we have the whole engineer, and then we're also looking at digital slow scan capabilities too. So we got a lot of things going on. So.
Okay, our next speaker, so far I haven't spotted him in the audience, David Minster, November Alpha 2 Alpha Alpha. He may come in a little bit later. He's the Chief Executive Officer of ARRO, and as you can imagine, he probably gets, well, I know, he gets pulled 16 ways to go any 1 minute, but he may come in yet. He had wanted to come in and speak for a few minutes, so we'll move on to our next speaker. We have a young lady, Hope Lee. Why don't you come on up, Hope, who's November Delta 2 Lima. And she is 15 going on 16 and probably done more ham radio satellite contacts than all of you put in together in this room.
Like Rosalie said, my name's Hope Lee. I've been a ham since I was 8, and my first contact was through satellites. So as you can imagine, my interest in the space industry has been pretty big and has been supported by amateur radio for a long time. I received at Yoda Camp in 2021, last June, to be one of a few of us to talk to the space station and ask a couple questions to an astronaut. And I want to be an astronaut, so I took this as an opportunity to talk to one of the few people actually in my field that I want to get into. So it became a family event because we all came together in the living room and we gave our ideas as to which questions we would ask, because I wanted to get the most out of the contact and learn something that could help me in my future. And I did. One of the questions I asked was, what was the hardest thing about space travel that training didn't prepare you for? There's very few astronauts that you get to meet just out on the street. So this was a huge opportunity for me to be able to learn something that I will be using for a long time. And I think a lot of other kids will also be using, because in amateur radio, there's a lot of science and STEM interest. And a lot of us may want to be astronauts, so I took that opportunity with ARISS. And it was a lot of fun because the people at Youth on the Air got to ask all kinds of questions, even those who weren't interested in STEM careers, and I really think that opened a lot of their eyes, as it has, I'm sure, a lot of the school students who have gotten to talk to the space station. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm sure it was for them too. And it's been a big help in my career. So, thank you.
It is so much fun to watch the kids when the radio contact gets initiated, when they usually start calling CQ before the space station is overhead, just in case. Sometimes the It's a little bit early, and some kids are like deer in the headlights because they're scared. I mean, naturally, you would be too if this is your big chance. You only got 10 minutes, make it happen, and maybe something doesn't go quite right, and then other kids are jumping up and down. One school, at the end of the contact, the kids jumped off the stage, and it was just such fun to watch them. Anyway, our next speaker, Diane Warner, why don't you come on up? Diane is Kilo Echo 8 Hotel Lima Delta. She was with an after-school program, which she's going to tell you about, which was working hand in glove with the school. And not only is Diana involved with education for ARISS, well, first of all, she's on our ARISS USA Education Committee, but she's also a volunteer examiner. She's active with her emergency services group with her club, and she's very active with the club in general. So, Diane.
Thank you, Rosalie. We found out we had our contact on Halloween, October 31st, 2018, and it really was an amazing experience. The moment I found out we were accepted for the contact, I ran down the hall to the principal's office, and yes, I ran down the hall. Not allowed to do that in school. I ran into the principal's office and I said, we got it. We're going to have an ARISS contact. And he was so excited. So he became our big cheerleader for our contact. The principal was awesome. He got the entire school really excited and pumped up about the contact. So the halls and the classrooms of our school, they were completely decorated with space decorations. The principal had encouraged the staff to go all out, trying to get our school ready for this big day. On the first day of school, the students were given a special t-shirt designed by one of our teachers. We had a big picture taken with the entire school and their new shirts, and a couple of people, maybe me, were wearing NASA flight suits just to kind of, get everybody excited. Is anyone from Ohio in this room? Yeah, we got some. All right, did you guys know there's 25 astronauts from Ohio? That's a lot of astronauts. We had a poster for every single astronaut in the hallways of the school for the kids so they could learn about these various astronauts. We had space camps. Kids sampled space ice cream. They took a tour of the ISS, and they did lots and lots of lessons on space astronauts in the amateur radio. The rocket team from Ohio State University brought the rockets to show our students, and we got to go in the gym and launch some Alka-Seltzer rockets, which was really cool and really messy, but they had a great time. One of the directors from NASA, Allison Bollinger, came. She was one of our local high school graduates and spent the day with the kids. The morning of the contact, I have to say, was very surreal. I walked in the building that day. I saw the antennas on the roof. They'd been there for months. But today, seeing those antennas up there was just so different, because I knew this was going to be special. So as people began to arrive in school that day, they were so excited. You could just sense everybody knew something really big was going to happen. We had our high school's criminal science and forensic program students came. Their job was to be outside and greet the students. First thing they asked me was, are we going to get to watch the contact? And of course, yes, you are. They were very excited. We had newspapers, radio, news stations in the school. They were interviewing students and staff and the ham operators. And it was so cool watching them talk to these students. They were just so excited. It was so contagious in that room. Some of you may know Scott Yonley, the Great Lakes Division. He was there. He said he saw a student, and the student was pulling on his pants leg. So Scott got down to his level and said, what can I do for you? And he said, Mister, I'm talking to an astronaut today. He was just so thrilled, and Scott was so moved by that. We have a picture of Gordon, who's out in the audience here, our ARISS mentor, and same thing. He knelt down to a child who was so excited to say, I'm talking to an astronaut. It was just so amazing for these kids. They were so excited. We had local and state dignitaries, the school boards, parents, and many others who experienced that experience with us. It took a whole year of planning and teaching for this 10-minute contact. There were over 750 people in the room that day, all on the edge of their seats. It was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. And then you hear astronaut Serena Unen-Chancellor say, NA1 SS. And it just gives you the chills, because you're hearing this astronaut on a ham radio. All the hard work, the late nights, at that point it didn't matter because I heard NA1SS on the radio. Took about 8.5 minutes for us to ask our 20 questions. Students did a great job, even though all these cameras are watching them. Even my little kindergartners who were so scared did a great job. After signing with the ISS, there was a sense of relief because, you know, it was done, and all these people were so moved by this experience. Our mayor actually immediately posted on Facebook the contact, all the pictures. He was so excited. So the support from our community was vital. It was also wonderful to feel that support. And I'd have to say, being part of an ARISS contact is the best experience I've ever had with amateur radio. It was very awesome. Oh, and I have to say, we did our entire contact off-grid.
And to just ask one more time, I don't see David Minster here yet, so maybe if he shows up yet, we can fit him in a little bit later. I just wanted to ask one more thing, and that is everyone who's helped with an actual ARISS contact, would you please stand up? Thank you. It takes a team.
It absolutely does, and I really, it's inspiring to watch all of the volunteers come in and make this program happen, and make these experiences similar to what Diane is talking about. I mean, we do 60 to 80 of these schools a year, and so just think of the force multiplier of what Diane just said, and the fact that we work with these schools for months preparing them for this contact, learning about radio technology and learning about all of the other aspects of space and amateur radio and radio science. It's really, really cool. You want to say anything about balloons?
Yeah, these are just a couple pictures that show the various things that some schools do. You know, when we say that the teachers want to talk about space and radio with their kids, it doesn't have to be just that. It can be any science, STEM, whatever maybe it could be something that your school is already planning to do in the way of science as part of your ARISS contact. And ballooning is one of the things that the teachers seem to really be able to pull all kinds of cross-curriculum subjects into their classroom. It's one of the reasons they like it, and the kids do too. It's great to track it, to see how far it'll go. We've had some competitions. We have lesson plans up on the website for the teachers to use also. And before we switch over to the next area, just wanted to say one last thing. Diane said that, you know, it was so exciting just before the contact. Well, I have to admit, every time I listen to one, which is almost all of our contacts, I can at least listen by live stream. The hair stands up on my arms and the back of my neck until I hear that voice come through and then start cheering.
Yeah, hearing the call sign is a big deal. And let me just say, I mentioned 60, 80 schools. We did a school this morning in Cologne, Cologne, and it was very successful. So we've got a phenomenal volunteer team all around the world that's supporting this. So now I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about this thing I described in the beginning called ARISS 2.0. It's actually our next generation vision for amateur radio on the International Space Station and amateur radio on human spaceflight vehicles in particular. So what I want to say is that our push in all of this is educating the next generation. It has been all along, but what we want to do is inspire, engage, and educate students and lifelong learners, which includes, you know, everyone in this room, because we all are lifelong learners. We learn all the time in this amateur radio hobby with so many different facets of it. Now, for me personally, you know, FT8 and all the other digital modes that are out there it's just so amazing. And so what we're going to do is we're providing more extensive educational outcomes for all, providing lesson plans, providing multiple human spaceflight missions. You all recognize that maybe you do, maybe you don't. There was a all-private astronaut mission that just happened a little bit ago called Axiom. We were engaged in that. We had 6 school contacts on that mission. So we're involved in that. There are other space stations being built. Randy Berger, who will be up shortly, and I have been talking about how do we get our hardware on those vehicles. And then lunar. Some of you heard us talk in 2019 about lunar. We'll talk a little bit more about that today. The other thing is to make this stuff available 24/7. Why is that? Because the world spins around every 24 hours, and people all around the world will engage with this. So we have a number of initiatives underway. You know, Rosalie talked about the mid and high altitude balloon launches, Axiom I just described. I talked a little bit about this digital SSTV capability, but we have the other initiatives in development, which are student mission control, downlink capability, stereo, and STAR. Stereo is the ARDC activity, STAR is a ARL Foundation activity, and ARISS is our lunar initiative. So this is encompassing all of what ARISS 2.0 is. So let me start with the Axiom flight. Why do we want to be involved in this? They're the first commercial company to fly a completely private astronaut mission to the space station. They're going to be building, whether you know this or not, they're going to be building modules and launching them and attaching to space station. But those modules will have solar panels, they'll have propulsion capability. They can later decouple from space station and fly independently. So last Hamfest I was at, everyone was asking, well, what's going to happen with ARISS when the space station, because they had heard that space station is going to go in 2030. Well, we're trying to prepare for that if it happens, because the space station, you've got to realize I worked for NASA for many years. Space station was supposed to end in 2015. It was supposed to end in 2020, 2024. So, you know, space station is going to be up there as long as it is practically possible. But we have to prepare for the future. So several companies are building these space stations, and we want to make sure, while we're interested in lunar, we want to make sure we have a low Earth orbiting focus in human spaceflight. And that's what this is all about. So we basically 2 crew members flew, used our equipment. 2 of the 4 crew members that flew used our equipment. Mark Pathy in Canada and Eitan Stibbe in Israel. They were launched on April 8th, and they did basically 6 school contacts as part of that. 5 in Canada and 1 in Israel. All of the contacts themselves were very, very good. And the thing I will say this is that the contacts were very good. We are all learning to work as a team. You know, private astronaut team is different than the career astronauts. And so there's been some lessons learned that we're working with Axiom and NASA and, you know, and of course us to try to improve the thing. Everything went well for the contacts. We just want to make it more efficient for everyone and to maximize the activities as they happen. So some of the educational activities we're talking about is, I keep talking about STEREO, which stands for Student and Teacher Education via Radio Experimentation and Operations. You're going to see a lot of acronyms in here. Unfortunately, some of us work in the space agencies or worked in the space agencies. So this isn't the ARDC grant that we got this year, and it's actually involves 3 different things that are going to be involved in the next 5 years. We really appreciate ARDC support to us for a 5-year period to do this. One is to deploy an electronic wireless technology kit called Sparky, which stands for Space Pioneers Amateur Radio Kit Initiative. The other, and so you can actually go to our booth in Building 4, and you can see a prototype of Sparky. The next thing is we can provide these kits to schools, but if the teachers don't know how to use them, it's going to sit on a shelf. So another part of this is teaching the teacher. In other words, having workshops and having our teachers like Diane and others go into conferences and things and explain this stuff and show them how to utilize it so that once the equipment is provided to the school, the teacher knows how to do it, they're comfortable, they can ask questions, they know who to talk to about it. And then the third part is sustaining our ISS contact operations. Our operations in Houston are not cheap. They're about $160,000 a year. And ARDC is providing some of that funding to keep that alive for the next 5 years. We really appreciate everything ARDC is doing for ARISS. And the other part about this is that we're going to be engaging in the development of Sparky, some underrepresented schools to actually learn about it, get the kits, and to excite students in not only in STEM, but in amateur radio. So they'll get to see what amateur radio is about, the spectrum, and how to use it. I mentioned Sparky, so some of the lessons they're going to learn is you start with waves and wave propagation, circuits, codes and ciphers. We have a SDR dongle as part of this, and actually satellite operations. You can actually use this to hear school contacts on space station, to pick up our SSTV images, and even the APRS repeater signals from a receive perspective. Rosalie, this one's yours.
I had the ruler handy. This next project is called ARISS Star, and it's named in honor of Keith Pugh, W5IU, who a lot of you, if you were interested in checking out Hamvention satellite radio contact demos, probably met him. He's now Silent Key, and the project is STAR, stands for Space Telerobotics Using Amateur Radio. And of course, our goal is to expand our educational programs beyond what we're doing now. And this one features telerobotics, which is fairly new. We all know kids just absolutely are gung-ho about robots. There are tons of kids who just really enjoy working with robots. Well, this is a little bit specialized with telerobotics, more like the Mars rovers and how they're controlled. And these would be in schoolrooms where kids, well, first of all, it starts with undergraduates who would be developing what's needed for these telerobotics courses, where the robots would be controlled on particular courses, like a car on a race course, basically. And so the kids could compete with each other from one schoolroom to another, from one school to another, from schools 500 miles away, and even involving the space station, which of course makes it even more exciting. And once the undergrads get everything developed and created, then it would be taken to the lower grades. And so this one is supported by the ARRL Foundation for year one. It's a 2-year program. And then the ARRL Incorporated is helping us fundraise for year 2. So again, as Frank said, we have more information at the booth to learn about ARISS Star, and of course our website talks about it too. But it's just yet another way to bring in kids into the hobby, and robots seems to be a good way to do it. And eventually, once they get more involved in the robots, they will discover that having an amateur radio license is very helpful to them, because it is going to use a packet system that has ties also with our radio system up on the space station. So, you know, we snag them in one way or the other, which is why we like to have a lot of different programs, and this is just one of them. So it's pretty exciting. Anything else I missed, Frank?
Thank you, Rosalie. So let me also describe the fact that our stereo system, what we're going to be doing is deploying that out to 60 to 80 schools a year. So that's part of what the ARDC is providing. What we're also going to be doing is with STAR. STAR is in early development stages as compared to stereos farther along. We've been working on some of this activity for what ultimately became stereo for several years now. and we're getting to the getting close to the operational phase on that. But what we also want to do is to take STAR, once it's matured enough, and incorporate it into the Sparky kit, so that it'll be part of the overall system that we can utilize. So I wanted to throw that connection in there, so you can see that that all of this will be even more comprehensive for students to be able to do with ARISS. So I think right now what we want to do is, we've talked about education, we talked about our educational projects that are ongoing, is to move into engineering. And I want to also introduce Randy. Randy Berger is our director of engineering. Sorry, Randy. And we're going to talk a little bit about the engineering stuff. So I'm going to start some of this because this actually Randy's been with us for a year now at this point, almost a year now, and I want to talk a little bit about where we are on the interoperable radio system. I kind of gave you a hint of it early on, but I'll say it again. Since the last Hamvention, we launched the radio system that we actually got some support from ARDC to finish up, which it was launched on March 6, 2020 and operational in September. It is providing the voice repeater and the packet radio capability that is being used extensively. Almost 100,000 APRS signals go through that radio system a year. And as I mentioned, students are now able to receive that, and a number of them are around the world using software-defined radios. So this is the radio system. If you haven't been to the booth, please come by. We have a flight identical. Actually, it's the engineering unit that Kerry Benke actually built up, and Dave Taylor did the radio system support with Kenwood. Of course, Lou McFadden, of course, was very intimately involved. And then the other project we're working on is we got a grant with ISS National Lab. That ISS National Lab got a grant from the National Science Foundation to do this student mission control pilot project. It's still a pilot, early phase thing. And part of it is to develop the student onboard sensor system. Basically what this is about is they're going to be, UC Berkeley and ISS National Lab are developing this mission control capability with interesting scenarios that students can learn about. Like, you know, when the space station upended itself, and how does that affect power, and how does that affect the whole system? So they're developing different scenarios. It'll be interesting for students to look at the data and mine the data, and then try to understand what happened. So it's more than just looking at, I'll say this, boring telemetry. It's looking at telemetry and finding out exciting things that happen with that telemetry, and gets them interested in understanding that it's not just boring all the time. So sometimes it gets very exciting, and sometimes that's good and bad. So I'm going to turn the rest over to Randy, and he's going to talk about the student onboard sensor system and what we're doing on the student mission control project.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Hamvention here. So I'm Randy Berger. Actually, I have two jobs. I've got my job here as a director of engineering, helping ARISS out, but my full-time job is a CTO for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. And as an executive, I focus on NASA, JPL, and Space Force too. So I'm involved with a number of space missions and things that we're doing right now. But it's a pretty exciting piece about what we're doing with the school in Berkeley and the national labs here, right? And so we're developing a number of new sensors that are going to be on the International Space Station. We have about 12 of them right now that we've incorporated together. We have schematics, and we're about ready to push those out to have boards made at this point in time. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, I think, still. We've got a 2-year plan that we're working on right now. But the idea is that once we get those sensors up on the station, they'll be monitoring data, and then they'll be sending the data back down to ground stations. And the initial thought was to use amateur radio operators, right? Because that's kind of what we want to send the data down via from the ISS using the Kenwood radio, the 710 radio that's up there, right? There's two methods we're going to do with that. One of them is with packet radio, right? So we're going to use packet radio sending the telemetry down. And the second one is going to be data under voice. And basically today with the Fox series satellites, when you're talking on them under the voice at 200 hertz and lower, we're sending data on some of the Foxtel satellites, which was pretty exciting. And so we're going to be able to get communications all the time with telemetry coming down to us. So that's pretty exciting. And then we're going to be using ground stations at schools too. We're proposing to have ground stations at schools too, so they can receive the transmissions too and be able to decode that. But that's actually going to be fed in. All the data we're receiving is going to be fed into a cloud server, and the Berkeley University is going to be using visualizations for emission control for students to access, which is pretty neat, right? So they can look at the dials and tweak them. So that's pretty exciting right now. I've got another project that's going on too that because of my work at Hewlett-Packard, I've asked our team with machine learning and AI to help us out with some voice capabilities and halon lenses and so forth too. So we're looking at doing that also. And so that's a pretty exciting next step for us into artificial intelligence, where you can just talk and it automatically do something for you, like change frequencies of the radios and so forth here. All right, so the sensors basically, these are kind of what we're working on today. They're kind of the basics one. The one that's kind of the most exciting one, which we've been having fun with here lately, Kerry's been working on, is the radiation detector. He's got that up and working, so now we're going to be able to detect a certain amount of radiation up there, which is exciting. The other one, which really piqued National Labs' minds, was the gas sensors, right? And when I went through, I had a list of that methane. They were, oh, this is perfect. The kids will love understanding what kind of methane's up there on the space station, right? So that was kind of different. But anyway, we're having fun with this. It is just about, our alpha boards are about ready to be sent out and get back, and I don't think it's going to take us very long to debug those actually. And it's pretty straightforward. We're using Raspberry Pi for the interface. We were going to go, and our plans were to use Raspberry Pi 4. We were pretty excited about that until we started doing some analysis of that, and we found out like the CPU itself, the core Broadcom chip, is running at 160 degrees, which is not fun. So dissipating that heat up there is kind of hard. And Hewlett-Packard Enterprise actually have a high-performance compute up there right now. We have it water-cooled. There's water going in and out on it to cool it, right? And so looking at that Raspberry Pi, there's no way we could set something with that hot up there. So we're trying to figure out exactly how to get that temperature range down and cool that off here. But this is an example kind of where we're going, basically with, the thought was during Christmas, we kind of changed our design a little bit to use a CubeSat type style base for putting the sensors into it. So basically it's going to hold the Raspberry Pis. I wanted to have 2 levels of that, so if one of them failed, we'd have a backup version of it in there. And then we'll be putting out our boards to the sensor hat and so forth will be built into that cube. We're actually, we were planning on putting where that red arrow is going. That's where we were going to put it, and it looked like a fairly good space. But we've actually determined that where the radio head is right now, where you see at the very bottom of the picture, looks like a better location, and it'll give us more space. So the mechanicals may change just a little bit here, but we're moving very fast on this, and it's pretty exciting. I have 10 engineers or volunteers that are helping us right now. They're all over the place in the U.S., the U.K., and then we've got the SSTV portion of it too that's being worked on too. We actually are going to put into the Raspberry Pi, and we have it working right now. We have the digital inner voice, which Chris Thompson is working on, and he's done a terrific job on that. And then Kieran over in the UK has been working on the digital SSTV with the Raspberry Pi, and that's working too. So he's got that software working on it, and we're going to add the APRS capabilities into it too. So we're going to get full APRS capabilities inside of the IROS, the Kenwood radio, versus what it has right now. It's very limited on what we can do with it. So once we go to that mode, we can do a lot of different things with it here. So it's pretty exciting with what we're doing today with this and where we're going. And we're looking at, I've got one volunteer that's working on SDRs right now, and we're looking at the Lunar Gateway and kind of where we're going to be positioning on the Lunar Gateway and so forth on it too, with SDRs going forward. And we're talking about, well, my idea was kind of a phase 1. We'll do an SDR first on the International Space Station as a stepping stone, and then we'll move on up to the Lunar Gateway here and portions of that. So this is actually a picture of the equipment that Hewlett-Packard has up there on the International Space Station. On the right-hand side of it, those connectors are the water going in and out. But down below down here is our radios. Our radios are really super close to what we've got, which is nice. And so we're going to interconnect those two. I've already gotten permission that we can interconnect those. So we'll have access to NASA's network, and we'll also have access to a lot of capabilities with machine learning and AI, because we've been doing a lot of experiments. One of the experiments, which we don't have the slide, I was going to send that to Frank here, but we did a joint experiment with Microsoft where when the astronauts go outside for EVAs and they use their gloves and they come back in, they have to take like 100 pictures of the gloves because they're looking for sharp points and things on the gloves themselves. Well, we've used our machine learning and AI with Microsoft. Microsoft developed the code, and we used it in our. They are now able to hold the glove up, and it'll automatically detect everything on it in seconds, where it takes over a week for them to download the pictures and go through that. So now we're able to move missions out towards Moon and to Mars, because there was no way you're going to be able to send pictures all the way back from Mars and have that capability, right? So that's kind of neat. So we're going to leverage that with our sensors, too. We're going to be able to do that with machine learning with our sensors also. Okay, did you want to talk about them?
So I think what Randy's bringing in is a lot of experience from his work at HPE into the engineering side of our activity. And we really appreciate him bringing that in. And this whole idea of voice recognition, too, is something we need in the future, because the astronauts are looking for, especially the private astronauts, are looking for cool interfaces. And so some of the things Randy's talking about is for us to draw them in as well as to draw students in. So these are things we're thinking about right now. They're not on paper yet, but just want to let you all know. The other thing we're working is our future, which is potentially flying something on a lunar mission. And so whether it's the Lunar Gateway or one of the Artemis missions, we're constantly in conversations with NASA about these activities. I'm going to say that Lunar Gateway over the past couple years has been more them trying to get their thoughts together on how to bring payloads on board. They have a couple payloads, actually 3, that they're flying on Gateway, but they're all associated with human research and radiation, which is also an important thing for human research, because we're not used to being out in space beyond the Van Allen belts, beyond our radiation shield, from all of the cosmic ray and all the sun interactions that could really kill an astronaut. So they want to understand that with Gateway in the very beginning, and then start bringing payloads on probably in the 26 to, but really 27, 28 time frame, 2028 time frame. So we're continually, I'm attending monthly meetings with the Gateway folks to understand where they're at. They're developing their requirements and what they need from us as payloads, not just us, Image Radio, but any other payload that's out there. And then we're going to work with them to try to engage. Now, we've developed some initial stuff, and you probably saw this before. We're going to continue to work this, the thing in the middle, the crew interface, is something that I really have tasked Randy to look at as to how we can make this really good for the crew, not just on space station, but also in lunar. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rosalie.
Okay, and I'll get one last call for David Minster in case he slipped in and I didn't see him, but I don't see him. So as you can see, we need help. You heard about all the things we're trying to do, and we have new people who've joined the team, but we've got new jobs that we need more people for. And you can kind of see down the list there all types of things that you could say, well, I'm not a hardware engineer, or I don't know anything about space hardware, but we need social media people, we need video people, we do need those engineers and such, but we also need school group mentors. We have a few out here in the audience, but we need more. We've got teachers who, once they've had their contact, they join our education committee and help with all kinds of things that have to do with education, and also get to go to some conferences sometimes and give talks about ARISS. And of course, we always need somebody who's an expert at fundraising and business development, and we also need administrative help. So we definitely need all of you who are interested in, it could be a short-term project, it could be a long-term project. So think about what your skills are. If you enjoyed seeing some of those faces on the kids, which you want to put up one of the pictures we have of the kids, you can see how excited they are. Just check out this one kid right in the center who's got his mouth hanging open. That was when he first heard the astronaut's voice come through. And you can see they're having fun learning and talking with the astronauts. It makes a lasting impression. Of course, the most common thing when they get interviewed by a TV representative is that they say one of two things, and the one is, "I'll never forget this day in my life." And Gordon out there has had the experience where, as Diane said, one of the little kids went up to him and said, "I'm talking to an astronaut today." And they just never forget that. And the second thing they say is, as Hope did, "I want to be an astronaut." So we need you. If you have any spare time, come see us at the booth.
Yeah, let me also say that if you come by the booth, it's important to recognize that if you want to volunteer for ARISS, you have to think about what your passion is. I think you all know what your passions are, and see if there's a match. And if there is, then it's great. We absolutely need more volunteers. And so we have a whole big list. It's 2 pages long of different things that we need help in. And if you want to come, if you're interested, stop by the booth and take a look at that. You can have a copy of it and think about it. So with that, I think that's it for today. I'd like to turn it over to, you want to say something?
My ruler out. We have a Q&A. Okay, so all right, what questions did you think of that you can try to stump us?
Go ahead.
Yes, I had a couple of questions. First was, stand up, yes. I had a couple of questions. First, you mentioned about the lunar program, and I didn't see the slide, it went by kind of fast. Are there plans to put a linear transponder on the moon that could work just like a regular satellite does that we're used to using?
So we're looking, so the question was, are there plans to put a linear transponder on the surface of the moon? We are looking at every opportunity we can. I mean, and let me just say, some of you know my background, some of you don't. I've been involved with NASA for many years. I still am as a contractor. Before I retired from NASA, I was chief engineer for exploration, which is what's now the Artemis program. So we're keeping our eyes on what is available on the lunar human missions, on the lunar robotic missions, and things like that are orbiting. So when we find something that, right now, landers can only stay alive for 2 weeks. We don't want to fly something that we spend a lot of time on and just let it run for 2 weeks on the surface of the moon. But the future generations of landers are going to be up all the time. So we're working and waiting and trying to maintain our network to make sure that can happen. No guarantees, but we've been successful on shuttle, on Mir, and on the International Space Station. We would like to do the same here. Okay?
My second question is actually about, kind of related to this slide right here. Has anybody gone back and tried to look up what became of students who did this in the shuttle program 20, 30 years ago? Where are they now, and how did this impact their career path?
We've got some of that data. It is hard. So he was asking, have we gone back and looked at some of these students? You know, we go back to the first actual school event happened in 1985 on Tony England's flight. And so we've been doing these school contacts since 1985. Some of these folks are grown up. Yes, we have done that. It's hard to do because, and Diane can attest to this, the teachers aren't allowed to continue to follow the students as they grow unless the students come to them. So, but what I can, but Facebook helps. Our first school contact that we did, we just had a 20th anniversary with them in 2020. Of the 10 students that talk to the astronauts, 5 of them are in STEM careers now. I just got a letter from somebody that actually would come to Goddard and help us develop the radio system. It was a father and a son team. The son now is a PhD, actually working at Goddard now. I didn't even know that until this got brought up. So there are individuals all around the world that have gotten into the STEM field because of what ARISS is doing. We don't have the breadth and depth of that, but we have vignettes of that.
There's also the problem of privacy laws. We can't, we are at risk even keeping names and addresses.
Yes, go ahead.
Dan, BR2HF, Hong Kong, K78 here. Been in Hong Kong 21 years. There's increasing activity and interest in satellites and ARISS in Asia. Tremendous increase. There's a couple of WhatsApp groups there that I just see more and more activity, even as I've been traveling in the U.S. here for the month of May. I'm getting messages, tons of messages, so it's exciting to see that. I have a comment and then a question. The comment is, for those who haven't heard school contact, do it. Make it happen when one pops up. I have a recording up on YouTube where a Japanese contact I recorded from Hong Kong with just this phone, nothing else. And it's a solid copy of the full flighting for 10 minutes of one-sided conversation, yes. But it's still a real treat to listen to it for anybody, not ham or otherwise. The question is, you mentioned, I believe it's the Axiom, private contacts, school contacts. How are those contacts done between the astronauts and the ground?
They're done exactly the way we do them with the career astronauts. We basically set them up. I will say the challenge we had was process. And what I mean by that is we have a way of doing all of these, and people are learning that process with us. So it's a kind of a, anytime you start a new business or you start a new group working together, it's this norming and storming aspect of, and that's what, it's nothing bad. It's just us being able, them understanding us and us understanding them. But they work exactly the way we do them all, we've been doing them for 20 years. Okay? Other questions? But we're getting close to the end, and what I wanted to do was I wanted to make a special presentation here because, and it's to Rosalie, because Rosalie, as part of her ARL duties and part of her volunteer work for ARISS, an important piece of keeping our sponsors aware and understanding of what we're doing is communicating to them what we're doing. And if we're not doing that enough, we always like our sponsors to let us know that. So she talks to our sponsors a lot, especially NASA and ISS National Lab, and she takes and generates our metrics. So 60, 80 schools, 120, 200,000 students a year, type things. We have all of the statistics down to the, the very detailed level. So, and Rosalie does it on time and does it accurately. And because of that, ISS National Lab gave her a patch that flew on one of the SpaceX flights to the International Space Station and was docked to Space Station for over a month. So with that, I'd like to finally, because I've had this for a while, we've been waiting for a face-to-face opportunity to hand this award over to Rosalie and congratulate her. Congratulations, Rosalie.
Well, and all of you are a part of this because I've been counting heads today while you were sitting there listening, And I'm going to report how many of you were listening to this, and that goes toward our metrics. So thank you to all of you.
So even in the middle of the presentation, she's generating our metrics for us. So thank you, Rosalie. I thank you all for coming and all of your support to ARISS over the years, our sponsors, NASA, and ISS National Lab, ARDC, and all the others, ARL and AMSAT, of course. And we look forward to talking to you one-on-one over the next few days. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day and a great time at Hamvention.